Hey everybody, Tim here with this week's graphic novel review. This week we are doing the IDW collection Transformers Volume 2, Phase 1 Volume 2, which is kind of important because they're now in Phase 3. So, starting way back at the beginning, it's, to be honest with you, so I love this comic book series. And I said, this is the reason why I started with it. It's because I'm such a big fan of it. So, I've read all of Phase 1. I think I've read all of Phase 2. I haven't started Phase 3 yet. That's why I'm kind of doing a reread to kind of get prepared. And Phase 2 is definitely my favorite. That's where, it is completely original. The things they do is unbelievable. So, I'll be honest with you, it did start out a little bit slow. This comic book series goes back to 2005, 2006. We're up to kind of 2007 even. And this is supposed to be the definitive reading order, which it's not. And I brought that up in the last review where you're supposed to read Stormbringer before you read part of the other stories. But you can only fit so much in a collection. So this one came out in 2010. It is 370 pages. So it's a decent sized book. It's pretty good. But I don't know. For me, this one lacked a little bit. This is definitely kind of the slow part because Transformers started with the IDW series. They started with 3 different series. And it was basically just a part 1, part 2, part 3. And this is the part 2, and I'll be honest, it was a little underwhelming for me. But the whole thing is worth it for one of the spotlights. So just like the last time, if you guys watched last week, I'll kind of do it the same way. I'm just going to break it down for each story, kind of give a recap of what happened and a review. So in the last book, in Volume 1, there was an issue where it actually says, oh, we need to call this character. And then there's an editorial note, see Stormbringer 1 through 4. And I was like, these are supposed to be in, reading order. So if they were, why was this not before? Okay, you can only fit so much, so they bumped it to Phase 2. I get it. I disagree with it, but I get it. So, of course, that's the first thing they start out with, is actually Stormbringer 1 through 4. I don't know, it was underwhelming for me, where we find out all about, radiation on Cybertron, but it's still healing, and we get these flashbacks of Optimus and Megatron working together, and it's are these, again, because this came out 5 years after the actual series did, is this something we're going to see? Is this something we should have seen? But why are we seeing it now? And it's really kind of odd. Prime gets the call from Earth, which is something we have seen already. So it's okay, so now we know where we are. Bludgeon, I don't even know how you say his name. A lot of these characters, you're until you hear somebody else say their name, you don't really know. Quick side story, I had a friend who, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, he swore up and down Magneto's name was Magneto, because he's Magnet. Oh, okay, and it makes sense. And it wasn't until the 2000 movie, the Bryan Singer movie, it's Magneto? That doesn't even make sense. Why is it Magneto? But so I don't necessarily feel bad, because when you read these comics, you're kind of getting how you feel. You're making up their voices, you get their names, but if you don't know how to pronounce them, okay. Same thing with Harry Potter. Hermione, so many people, I remember when I was in elementary school, so many people called her Hermione, and that when you actually got to one of the books, she actually says her name phonetically, and even says, it's not this, it's this. And it's okay, that's what you need to do if you're going to have a complex name. So, Bludgeon, I'm assuming, has, gone crazy. So he's in the series. We've seen him before, and so there was a character, Thunderwing, from years ago, and he's oh, Cybertron's gonna go bad, you gotta, fix yourself. Went crazy. We get our introduction to the Wreckers, which is amazing. Again, it's a group of characters that we will see in future issues, and they only get better. I love the Wreckers. The Wreckers are phenomenal characters. So anyways, by the time we get to the 3rd issue, now Bludgeon has done the same thing that Thunderwing did and has also lost his mind. Big fucking surprise. I don't know. It's weird. Like I said, it's very lackluster. It's very kind of predictable. We hear a little bit more about the regenesis on Earth, which is something we've already heard about from Shockwave and stuff like that. And that's it. Like, it's the whole series. And I was like, why is this even a thing? Like, this didn't, you could have, cut that whole thing out. Didn't need to be a thing. From here, we go to Escalation, issues 1 through 6, where the Autobots are still being watched, even though they're on the bottom of the lake. The kids have to leave. They've served their purpose. They've done their thing. I should, like, prop that up. Nope. Sunstreaker and Ironhide are asked to escort the kids, and we hear a little bit about the historical references to both Shockwave and Soundwave, which go back to the spotlights, because we know Soundwave is locked in his like boombox mode, and Shockwave was buried in the lava. Very important stuff going on. Sunstreaker and Hunter blown up. I don't believe it for a second, mostly because the series is still going, so I was like, nope, not going to be a thing. Sure enough, the very next issue, we realized that, like, oh, Sunstreaker's body was taken. We see Wheeljack and Jazz, great characters from the original series, from the movies. You probably recognize them. Like, I hated the first movie where, like, Jazz was just killed. Like, why is he the only one killed? And it, like, was such a throwaway line. Ugh, anyways, irritated. And we realized that the body was not actually Sunstreaker. Lots of twists. They seem very interesting. It's all build-up. Like, the whole story is just build-up. We learned about the mass displacement, which I loved. I was so excited for this one. So, a lot of the complaints of the original series, like the animated series from the 80s, was like, Megatron transformed into a gun. And even then, he needed somebody to fire him. 9 times out of 10, it was Starscream. But that was it. Like, he couldn't do anything by himself. He needed somebody else. And so, like, I remember when the movie came out and kind of the behind-the-scenes thing, they were like, it's stupid. Like, why would that be a thing? That's why in the movie, he's kind of like a triple. Like, he can go to a jet or a tank and all sorts of stuff. Because they were like, no, we're not going to just make him into a gun that somebody else has to fire. And even then, especially with the comics, they've dealt a little bit more with, like, you cannot, like, if you're a big thing, you're going to transform into another big thing. So if Megatron's like the size of a building, how's he going to transform into a gun? And so it's mass displacement. It's a very rare thing. Not everybody can do it. You haven't even seen it in a long time. So it's like, ooh, I already like this, because they're addressing those types of issues. So Megatron's out there trying to start wars with Russia and other countries. Okay. In the meantime, Verdi and Jimmy look to see who made the decoy of Hunter, or who made the decoy of Sunstreaker. Where's Hunter? Okay, like, some of this is really interesting. The Arc 32 is in orbit. How many arcs are there? Because there's the Arc 32, we've seen the Arc 19, I think we saw the Arc 22 at one point. There's so many arcs. Like, I'm sorry. Like, for Star Trek, for example, there was only one Enterprise at a time. There's not, like, 15 of them all flying around the galaxy. Pick a ship, stick with it. Very irritated by that. We see Nightbeat, name drop there, because we know he's like, from his spotlight, we know that he's like a sleeper agent. Hardhead and Hot Rod, who we've also seen in his own spotlight. Hunter's in surgery. That's obviously going to be a dark story. You can just tell. And Jimmy and Verdi being gassed. I don't know. As that story progresses, I kind of stop caring. Like, it's not that great. And then, of course, like, Ironhide and Ratchet or whatever, like, have to save them. It's boring. Like, it's not that interesting. I'm sorry. I wanted to like it. I love those characters. But this storyline is just so build-up. It's just all character build-up. Cybertron is still dying, which, again, like, the definitive reading order, we saw it alive, and now we see it dying. We don't really see a lot of that middle area. It's all just kind of stuff that you have to fill in with your own imagination. The Megatron and Prime battle is amazing. It's straight out of the original movie, One Must Live, One Must Fall. It's great. It's really, really well done. And then, like, God, so much stuff's going on. Until, like, we find out that Shockwave has been found, and Skywatch is taking over. So, that spotlight's coming around, you find out a little bit more stuff. The last issue's where it just, boop, it just tanks, where, like, Optimus is dead. Shit, okay, so this is different. But he downloaded his consciousness into his trailer. Okay, what? And then he just comes up right behind Megatron, boom, shoots him in the head. Megatron's like, ow, and runs away. What? Like, it's so quick. It's really, really disappointing. We see Hunter alive. Something's going on there, especially with like this like Cybertonian that is dying, but I mean, you only see him from behind, so you don't really know what's going on there. We see Ravage and Laserbeak chained down, and then finally Megatron's like, somebody call Sixshot. Editorial comment, see spotlight of Sixshot. I'm like, fuck, again? Like, really? And then to be continued, devastation. So we're going right into the third part. So I was like, okay. I don't know. It wasn't great. It was interesting. A lot goes down, but it's not great. So, like, I can't say it again. This series is amazing. I cannot recommend the IDW Transformers run enough. It is a slow start, but it's one of those, it has its payoffs. From here, it's nothing but spotlights. The spotlight of Sixshot that we just heard about from the editorial comment, it's awful. He's overly dramatic. He meets the Reapers, which are like rare creatures from other places, and they're like, kill your friends to join us, and he's like, fuck you, and then just leaves. So if they come back, that's great. If they don't, oh well, it wasn't great. Ramjet spotlight, same thing. Him talking to Skywarp about like, I'm going to defeat Megatron. Oh, we haven't seen that before. The best part is the mini Constructicons, like, that have been listening to satellite radio, and so they just use slang all the time is great. I'm sick of the artificial humans, the artificial humans. I'm sick of them. I think they're a cop-out. I don't like it. And then Megatron just comes up at the end and destroys Ramjet, and it's like, so the whole issue was pointless. Got it. Okay. Ultra Magnus was an interesting spotlight. It's a good setup for later. Him chasing Swindle's around forever, and he's a fantastic character. I really like him. But I think this is the first time we've seen him. And so to see him in these early issues is great. Scorponok, again, an early character. We'll see him a lot more coming down the road. So I'm super excited for that. That's about it. Probably my favorite issue, the only reason that I would love to read this book again, is Cup. Cup is one of my favorite characters, especially later on when he gets his cigar. He's great. He's just this old-timer, like, Cybertonian who trained everybody and their brother, including Optimus Prime. And the whole thing is about just him being stuck on this planet with Outback, who's dead, and he's just talking to this dead Autobot. And ghosts are attacking him, and they're like, we're coming to get you! And it's creepy as fuck. Like, the drawing style's creepy, everything about it's creepy. The Arc 17... Another arc. Why is there another arc? The Arc 17 shows up. Springer and Perceptor are in this one. Perceptor's easily one of my favorite characters. I love Perceptor. And so it turns out that Cup has been like done by this radiation, and they keep trying to save him, but he just keeps pulling out energy from nowhere and actually killing other Autobots, people who are trying to save him. And it's heartbreaking. It is so sad to see like this old guy, and everybody's like, just let him die. And they're like, technically if we leave him and his core explodes, it's going to blow up the whole planet. So we need to get him out of there. So it's so sad and it's so heartbreaking. And that's the whole thing, is they've been trying to talk to him, but he thinks they're ghosts. And it's just, finally Trailbreaker is the one who has to go in there and actually get him. But it's really, really sad. It's really kind of heartbreaking. Mirage was stupid. Like, it was pointless issue. I'm sorry to say, but it's so pointless. Where it's just him, like, I have these dreams, and I'm a Decepticon, and I'm killing people, pretending to be Bumblebee, and just destroying everybody. It's just a dream. I'm an Autobot. Life's good. Pointless. I just skip it. It's not great. Finally, the spotlight of Optimus Prime. Again, I was so excited, especially like the first page where it's all the references to the other spotlights. And I was like, ooh, here, they're all going to come together. It's going to be great. They reference Escalation, so that whole 6-parter's done. So I was like, oh, where's this going to go? This is going to be so good. Nope, he's going to go see Omega Supreme. It's sad. So I think I mentioned in the last review, it's hard to, like, there's so many Transformer, like, media out there with TV shows and stuff that sometimes, like, I hear different voices. Like, Starscream, I hear Chris Latta. Optimus Prime, I hear Peter Cullen. Like, it's the voice of Eeyore. Like, I hear Optimus Prime very, very easily. When Omega Supreme came on, I hear his original voice, and I always think of the episode from the original series where Omega Supreme's like, I'm going to talk normal now. So a long time ago, this stuff was going on, and it's like, what? And that's kind of how I felt about this episode, where Omega Supreme, like, I was hearing it in his normal monotone voice, but he was like, I'm not gonna tell you what's happening, because you suck! And I was like, oh, okay. So tell us about the first arc, because that's what we need is another arc. And Nova Prime. And then this monster that's 6-in-1, that from G-Axis, who worked for Nova. Big surprise. You know they're going to show up again later. It's a Gestalt. It's the first Gestalt, so I'm super excited for that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, this whole book was a little disappointing. I'm not going to lie. It was really kind of sad. I loved it. A lot of the art is fantastic, and knowing where the stories go, I know a lot of it's really important, but realistically, Cup is the only one that I was like, that made this book for me. So, I don't know. I did struggle with this one as much as I love this whole collection. I did struggle a little bit. I'm curious if you guys have read any of this. What have your thoughts been? And I will see you guys next Friday for Volume 3.